Before we begin, thank you for spending part of your day with me. Whether you're listening from home, work, on a long drive, or before bed, I'm grateful you're here. Tonight's story is filled with mystery, heartbreak, destiny, and a love that changes everything. Please like, share, and subscribe. And comment below where you're watching from so I can see just how far across the world this story has reached. Now, let's dive into today's unforgettable story. Milano Central Station hummed with 10,000 souls moving in calculated chaos. Businessmen clutched briefcases. Tourists dragged wheeled luggage across marble floors. Announcements echoed through vaulted ceilings that had witnessed a century of arrivals and departures. But something was different today. The crowd parted like water before a ship's bow. Not gradually, instantly. People who had been rushing to catch their trains suddenly found urgent reasons to step aside, to look away, to become invisible. 6 men in dark suits moved in perfect formation. Their eyes scanned constantly. Their hands remained close to their sides, close to the weapons concealed beneath Italian wool and silk. And in the center of their formation walked a man who made the air itself seem to grow cold. Vittorio De Falco. The name alone was enough to silence conversations across 3 countries. The most feared mafia boss in Europe. A legend whispered about in the underworld. A man whose empire stretched from Milan to Moscow, whose word was law, whose enemies had a habit of simply disappearing. He stood 6'4". Jet black hair swept back from a face carved from Roman marble, sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, light stubble that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less. His steel-gray eyes held no warmth, no mercy, no hint of the humanity that might make him approachable. Above the collar of his black shirt, Italian script curled across the left side of his neck. Il cor ricorda. The heart remembers. But if you asked anyone who knew Vittorio De Falco, they would tell you his heart remembered nothing except old wounds and older hatreds. He was checking his watch, a gesture that should have been mundane but somehow seemed threatening when it happened. A woman emerged from the crowd at the worst possible angle. She moved with an unusual gait, confident yet careful, her white cane sweeping the floor ahead of her in practiced arcs. Her long, dark brown hair cascaded over the shoulders of a cream-colored coat. Her face was turned slightly upward, beautiful hazel eyes catching the light from the station's massive windows. She never saw the wall of bodyguards. She never saw them part in confusion. She walked directly into Vittorio De Falco. The collision was gentle, her shoulder against his chest, but the reaction was explosive. Her coffee cup tumbled from her hand, shattering against marble. The sound echoed like a gunshot. His bodyguards reached for their weapons. The nearest civilians scrambled backward, pressing against walls, ducking behind pillars. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," the woman said immediately, her hands coming up in apology, her beautiful eyes looking somewhere past his left shoulder. "I didn't hear anyone. The announcement drowned everything out. Are you all right? Did I spill on you?" She couldn't see the terror around her. She couldn't see the weapons half-drawn from holsters. She couldn't see the crowd frozen in anticipation of violence. Because Isabella Marino had been blind for nearly a decade. Vittorio didn't move. His right-hand man, Enzo Bellandi, started forward, reaching for the woman's arm to remove her from their boss's presence. It was protocol. It was protection. It was what they always did when civilians got too close. But Vittorio's hand shot up. A single gesture. "Stop." Enzo froze. The other guards froze. Time itself seemed to freeze. Because Vittorio De Falco, the man who hadn't shown emotion in public for over a decade, the man whose face remained stone through business deals and betrayals, through gunfire and grief, was staring at this blind woman's face with an expression his men had never seen. His steel-gray eyes had widened. His lips had parted. His chest had stopped moving, as if he'd forgotten how to breathe. And then he spoke. A single word. A whisper. "Stellina." The word fell into the silence like a stone into still water. Stellina. Little star. Enzo's blood ran cold. He had worked for Vittorio De Falco for 22 years. He had stood beside him through wars and funerals, through victories and losses that would have destroyed lesser men. He had heard Vittorio give orders that ended lives, make promises that built empires, deliver threats that toppled governments. But he had never, not once in over 2 decades, heard that word leave his boss's lips. That word belonged to another time, another life, a life that ended 10 years ago in fire and blood and a grief so profound that Vittorio had buried it beneath an empire of cold brutality. Stelina, the blind woman's head tilted slightly, confused. I'm sorry. Vittorio didn't answer. He couldn't answer. He was staring at her face, at the curve of her cheek, the shape of her lips, the way her dark hair fell across her shoulders. His hands, adorned with tattooed letters spelling honor e verit across his knuckles, had begun to tremble. Sir. Enzo stepped closer, lowering his voice. Sir, we need to move. The train. Cancel it. The words came out rough, barely human. Sir. Cancel the train. Cancel the meeting. Cancel everything. Vittorio's eyes never left the woman's face. Enzo. Look at her. Enzo looked. He saw a beautiful blind woman in her late 20s. Dark hair. Hazel eyes clouded by damaged corneas. A face that was lovely but unfamiliar. I don't. Look at her. And then Enzo saw it. The shape of her eyes. The curve of her jaw. The small birthmark just below her left ear, barely visible beneath her hair. His heart stopped. No, it was impossible. She was dead. They had held the funeral. They had mourned. Vittorio had nearly destroyed himself with grief and guilt and rage that burned so hot it consumed everything in its path. Angelina Ferraro was dead. She had been dead for 10 years. And yet here stood a woman who could have been her twin. A woman who, if she were 10 years older and somehow still alive, would look exactly like this. Who? Enzo's voice cracked. Who is she? The blind woman shifted uncomfortably. Is something wrong? I said I was sorry about the coffee. If there's damage to your clothing, I can. What is your name? Vittorio's voice cut through her apology like a blade. Low, intense, barely controlled. The woman's brow furrowed. I'm Isabella. Isabella Marino. Look, I really am sorry about bumping into you, but I should. Marino. Vittorio breathed the name like it hurt him. Not Ferraro? I don't know anyone named Ferraro. Isabella's posture had shifted from apologetic to wary. She was blind, not naive. The intensity radiating from this stranger was setting off every survival instinct she possessed. I need to go. My train. Where are you going? That's really none of your business. I'm making it my business. Isabella's chin lifted. Despite her inability to see the 6 armed men surrounding her, despite the fact that she had somehow stumbled into the presence of Europe's most dangerous criminal, her spine straightened with unmistakable dignity. I don't know who you are, she said quietly, but I know what authority sounds like. I've had enough of men who think they can demand answers simply because they want them. Excuse me. She stepped to the side, her cane sweeping ahead of her, intending to walk away. Vittorio caught her arm. It was gentle, far gentler than any touch he'd delivered in years, but it stopped her cold. Don't. His voice had dropped to something barely above a whisper. Please, please. Enzo felt his world tilt on its axis. He had never heard Vittorio de Falco say that word. Not to business partners. Not to allies. Not to the few women who had briefly warmed his bed before being dismissed with cold efficiency. Please. Isabella turned her face toward him, and for a moment, her clouded hazel eyes seemed to look directly into his steel-gray ones. Why? It was the simplest question in the world. And Vittorio de Falco, a man who had answers for everything, found himself unable to respond, because the truth was impossible. The truth was that she had Angelina's face, Angelina's voice, Angelina's stubborn dignity and quiet courage. The truth was that looking at her was like seeing a ghost, or perhaps something even more terrifying, a resurrection. Because I need to know, he finally said, and even he could hear the rawness in his own voice, who you really are. 20 minutes later, Isabella Marino found herself in a place she never expected to be. The back of a private car, surrounded by men she couldn't see, being driven to a destination no one would tell her. She should have been terrified. Some part of her was terrified, the rational part that understood she had been essentially kidnapped by strangers in broad daylight. The part that knew her white cane was not a weapon, that her blindness made her vulnerable in 100 ways sighted people never had to consider. But another part of her, a strange, inexplicable part, felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Safety, which made absolutely no sense. "You could at least tell me where we're going," she said to the silence around her. The car smelled expensive. Leather and wood polish and something else. Something masculine and somehow familiar, though she couldn't place it. The man from the station sat beside her. She could feel the heat of his body, could hear his breathing, could sense the weight of his attention like a physical pressure against her skin. "My home," he said. "I don't even know your name." A pause. Then, "Vittorio. Vittorio." She tested the name on her tongue. "And what do you do, Vittorio?" Silence. "That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting right now." Isabella laughed. A short, incredulous sound. "So let me understand this. You've put me in a car against my will. You're taking me to an unknown location. You won't tell me who you are or what you want. And you expect me to just sit here quietly?" "I expect nothing." His voice was low, rough, like gravel wrapped in velvet. "But I'm asking, why?" "Because I believe you may be connected to someone I lost a long time ago. And if I'm right..." He trailed off. Isabella waited, but he didn't continue. "If you're right, then what?" She heard him exhale. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. "Then everything I believed for the last 10 years has been a lie." The car pulled through gates that Isabella couldn't see, up a driveway she couldn't measure, and stopped before a building whose size she could only guess at from the echo of the driver's door closing. Hands helped her out, different hands than before, clinical and professional. She was guided upstairs, through doorways, across floors that changed from marble to carpet to marble again. Finally, she was settled into a chair. Soft leather. Comfortable. Footsteps retreated. A door closed. And then silence. Isabella sat perfectly still, her white cane across her lap, her senses straining to gather information. The room was large. She could tell by the way sounds moved through it. There was a window nearby. She could feel the warmth of sunlight on her left arm. The air smelled of old books and leather and the same masculine scent she'd noticed in the car. "You're not alone," she said to the darkness. "I can hear you breathing." A soft sound that might have been surprised admiration. "Most people wouldn't notice." "I'm not most people." Isabella turned her face toward the voice, toward Vittorio. "I've been blind for 9 years. You learn to pay attention to things sighted people ignore." 9 years. His voice had moved closer. "You weren't born blind?" "No." "What happened?" Isabella's hands tightened on her cane. "An accident. I was 18. 10 years ago." The math clicked into place with devastating precision, but Isabella couldn't know that. She couldn't see the way Vittorio's face had paled, the way his tattooed hands had gripped the arms of his chair. "What kind of accident?" "I don't remember." The words came out practiced, automatic, a response she had given 1,000 times to doctors and well-meaning strangers. "I was in a car accident. I woke up in a hospital 3 weeks later. They told me I'd been in a coma. When I finally opened my eyes, I couldn't see anything." "And before the accident? What do you remember?" "Nothing." Isabella's voice hardened slightly. "I have no memories before waking up in that hospital. The doctors said it was trauma-induced amnesia. They said my memories might come back eventually. They haven't." Vittorio rose from his chair. Isabella heard his footsteps, measured, controlled, moving across the room. "The people who raised you after the accident." "I wasn't raised by anyone after the accident. I was 18, legally an adult." Isabella's chin lifted. "I was told I had no family. No one came to claim me, so I rehabilitated myself. I learned to live with blindness. I built a life." "Where?" "Bologna, then Venice, now Florence." She paused. Why does any of this matter to you? The footsteps stopped. For a long moment, Vittorio didn't answer. Isabella heard something. A drawer opening, papers rustling, and then footsteps returning. I'm going to give you something, he said, and his voice was strange now, tight, controlled in a way that suggested he was barely holding himself together. It's a photograph. Obviously you can't see it, but I'm going to describe it to you, and I want you to tell me if anything I say triggers a memory. Anything at all. Isabella nodded slowly. Vittorio took a breath. The photograph shows a young woman. She's 17 years old. She has long dark brown hair, darker than yours is now, but the same texture, the same wave. Her eyes are hazel. She has a small birthmark just below her left ear. Isabella's hand drifted unconsciously toward her own neck, toward the small birthmark she knew was there, the one she'd always had, the one nobody had ever commented on before. She's standing in a garden, Vittorio continued. There are roses behind her, red roses, her favorites. She's wearing a white dress with small blue flowers embroidered along the hem, and she's smiling, laughing actually, looking at someone off camera. His voice caught. Looking at me. Isabella sat very still. Who was she? The pause lasted forever. Her name was Angelina Ferraro. She was the daughter of one of my father's closest allies. Vittorio's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. And when she was 17 years old, I fell in love with her. Isabella's breath caught. She was innocent, kind, too good for the world I lived in, too good for me. But she didn't care. She used to sneak out to meet me, used to bring me books because she knew I loved to read but would never admit it. Used to call me Il mio orso, my bear, because she said I was grumpy and intimidating but secretly soft. What happened to her? Vittorio didn't answer for so long that Isabella thought he might not. Then, finally, there was an attack. A rival family. They hit the Ferraro compound on the night of Angelina's 18th birthday. The entire estate burned. Angelina's parents were killed. And Angelina. His voice broke. Angelina's body was never found. But there was so much fire, so much destruction. The investigators said no one could have survived. Isabella's heart was pounding. You think I'm her? I think you look exactly like what she would look like at 27. I think you have her birthmark, her voice, her mannerisms. I think you were found in a car accident with no memory, alone and unclaimed, at the exact age she would have been when she disappeared. And I think that's impossible. Isabella stood abruptly. I'm not. I can't be. The name you were given at the hospital, Vittorio said. Marino. Do you know where it came from? They said. Isabella paused. They said it was on a piece of jewelry I was wearing when they found me. A bracelet. The clasp was engraved with the name Marino. Vittorio made a sound like he'd been struck. Angelina's mother, he said quietly. Her maiden name was Marino. The room spun. Isabella reached out instinctively, searching for something to steady herself, and found a warm hand closing around hers. Vittorio's hand. His grip was strong but gentle, his fingers slightly rough, and against her palm she could feel the slight ridges of tattooed letters on his knuckles. I'm not saying this is what happened, he said, and his voice was closer now, so close she could feel his breath against her hair. I'm saying I need to find out. I need to know if somehow, impossibly, you survived that night. If someone saved you. If someone took you and left you to be found with no memory of who you really were. Why? Isabella whispered. Why would anyone do that? Because there were people who wanted every Ferraro dead, who would have hunted down any survivor to finish what they started. Vittorio's free hand rose to cup her face, his touch so gentle it made her chest ache. But if you were found as a stranger, an anonymous victim with no memory, no identity, no connection to the Ferraro family, you would be safe, hidden in plain sight. Isabella's eyes, her useless, clouded eyes, filled with tears. I don't remember anything. I know. I don't remember you. I don't remember roses or white dresses or sneaking out at night. I know. I don't remember being loved. Vittorio's thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "That's all right," he said quietly. "I remember enough for both of us." That night, Isabella was given a room in the east wing of Vittorio's estate. It was more luxurious than anywhere she had ever stayed. She could tell by the softness of the sheets, the size of the bed, the quality of the silence that suggested thick walls and expensive soundproofing. A woman named Julia had been assigned to assist her, middle-aged, from her voice, kind but careful, the sort of person who knew how to serve without intruding. "Is there anything else you need, Signorina?" Isabella sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap, her white cane propped against the nightstand. "Just answers," she said. "But I don't think those are on the menu." Julia made a soft sound of sympathy. "Signor DeFalco is a complicated man, but he is not a cruel one. Whatever his reasons for bringing you here, I do not believe he means you harm." "DeFalco?" Isabella's head tilted. "That's his full name? Vittorio DeFalco?" The pause was just a heartbeat too long. "Yes, Signorina." "Why did you hesitate?" Julia cleared her throat. "I am not certain what you know of Signor DeFalco's position." "I know nothing. He wouldn't tell me anything except that he thinks I might be a dead woman." Another pause. Then carefully, "Perhaps it is best if Signor DeFalco explains himself in his own time." After Julia left, Isabella sat in the darkness. A darkness that was no different from her usual experience, and tried to make sense of the day. This morning she had been Isabella Marino, a blind woman living in Florence, a translator who worked from home, converting Italian texts into English and French, a job that required ears and fingers but not eyes. A woman who was lonely but self-sufficient, who had long ago accepted that her life before the accident was gone forever. Now she was, what? A ghost? A survivor? A woman whose face had made a dangerous stranger whisper a name from his past? Stellina. The word echoed in her memory. She didn't know what it meant. Her Italian was fluent, but there were still gaps in her vocabulary. But something about the way he'd said it had made her heart ache. Like recognition. Like homecoming. Like being seen for the first time in 9 years. Which was impossible. She had never met Vittorio DeFalco. She would remember that voice. That deep, rough, velvet gravel voice that made something in her chest tighten every time he spoke. Wouldn't she? Across the estate, in a study filled with old books and older secrets, Vittorio DeFalco stood before a wall of photographs. Most people would have seen a display of family history, generations of DeFalcos captured in silver and sepia, stern-faced patriarchs and elegant wives, children in christening gowns and young men in military uniforms. Vittorio saw ghosts. His father, his mother, his brothers, all dead now, claimed by the violence that was the birthright of their bloodline. And in one corner, separate from the others, a single photograph that he had looked at every day for 10 years. Angelina. She was laughing in the photograph, her dark hair catching the sunlight, her hazel eyes bright with joy, looking at him, looking at the camera he'd been holding, trying to capture this perfect moment before it slipped away forever. It's her. Vittorio didn't turn at the voice. He didn't need to. He had known Enzo was there, waiting in the shadows, watching his boss stare at the ghost on the wall. "I don't know that yet." "Yes, you do." Enzo stepped forward, coming to stand beside him. "I watched you in the station. I heard you say her name. I saw your face when she spoke. You know exactly who she is." Vittorio's jaw tightened. "Angelina is dead. So we believed. So we were told." Enzo's voice was careful, measured. "But we never found a body. We always assumed the fire. The fire was devastating. Complete." The investigators said. The investigators were wrong. Or they were paid to be wrong. Enzo turned to face him. "Vittorio, if someone saved her, if someone got her out of that fire and hid her, there are only a few people who could have done it. And most of them are dead." "Most." Vittorio's eyes remained fixed on the photograph. "Not all." "No, not all." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Vittorio spoke. "Find Dr. Mariani. Mariani is retired. Find him." Vittorio's voice hardened. He was the Ferraro's family physician. If anyone saved Angelina that night, if anyone treated her injuries and helped her disappear, it would have been him. And if he won't talk? Vittorio finally turned from the wall of photographs. In the low light, the tattoo on his neck seemed to pulse with each beat of his heart. Il cor ricorda. The heart remembers. Everyone talks eventually, he said. That's the one truth our world has taught me. 3 days passed. 3 days in which Isabella was not quite a prisoner but not quite free. She was allowed to move through the parts of the estate deemed safe, a term Julia used without explanation. She was fed extraordinary meals by a chef who seemed determined to discover her favorite foods through trial and error. She was given access to an audio library that rivaled anything she'd encountered in her work as a translator. But she was not allowed to leave. And Vittorio did not come to see her. On the morning of the 4th day, Isabella had had enough. I need to speak with him, she told Julia during breakfast. With Signor de Falco. He is very busy, Signorina. Perhaps nothing. Isabella set down her coffee cup with more force than necessary. He brought me here. He told me I might be someone I've never heard of. He talked about fire and death and a love story from 10 years ago. And then he disappeared. I deserve answers. Julia was quiet for a moment. Then softly, I will see what I can do. 2 hours later, Isabella was escorted to Vittorio's study. She knew it was a study before anyone told her. The smell of old books was unmistakable. Paper and leather and the faint mustiness of knowledge accumulated over generations. Beneath that, the masculine scent she was beginning to associate with Vittorio himself. Leave us. His voice came from somewhere to her left. Close. Isabella heard Julia retreat, the door closing behind her. You wanted to see me. I want answers. Isabella moved forward carefully, her cane sweeping ahead of her. 3 days I've been in this house. 3 days without explanation. You can't just append someone's entire understanding of their own life and then vanish. I wasn't vanishing. I was investigating. Investigating what? A pause. Then footsteps moving closer. When Vittorio spoke again, his voice was right in front of her. Do you trust me? Isabella almost laughed. You kidnapped me. I invited you to my home. After surrounding me with armed men in a train station. Fair point. There was something in his voice, something that might have been dry humor in anyone else. Let me rephrase. Are you willing to trust me long enough to hear what I've learned? Isabella considered the question. She should say no. She should demand to be returned to Florence immediately. She should forget any of this had ever happened and go back to her small apartment and her quiet life. But she didn't want to. Some part of her, some deep, inexplicable part, wanted to know the truth. Needed to know the way flowers needed sunlight. Tell me, she said. Vittorio took her hand. The contact was electric. His fingers warm and slightly rough, the tattooed letters pressing against her palm. Come with me, he said. There's someone you need to meet. The drive took 40 minutes. Isabella tracked the journey through sensations. The turns of the car, the quality of the road, the shift from city traffic to country quiet. When they stopped, Vittorio helped her out of the car himself. His hand stayed on the small of her back as he guided her up a short path and through a door that creaked with age. The inside smelled of medicine and dust. An old building, she thought. Possibly a house, possibly a clinic of some kind. Ah, Vittorio. The voice was elderly, male, and tinged with something that might have been fear. Dr. Mariani. Vittorio's voice was ice. Thank you for seeing us. As if I had a choice. A bitter laugh. Your men made it very clear what would happen if I refused. Let's not dwell on unpleasantries. Vittorio guided Isabella forward. I want you to look at this woman, doctor. Look at her closely. And then I want you to tell me the truth about what happened 10 years ago. Silence. Then footsteps, shuffling, old, approaching. Isabella felt the weight of examination. Someone studying her face, her hands, her posture. She resisted the urge to fidget. My God! The doctor's voice had changed. The fear was still there, but beneath it was something else. Something like wonder, She's alive. After all these years, Angelina is alive. Isabella's heart stopped. I'm not. You are. Dr. Mariani's voice was trembling now. I would know your face anywhere. I delivered you. I treated your childhood illnesses. I set your broken arm when you fell from that tree at age 12. A papery hand touched her cheek. You have your mother's eyes, her exact eyes, and the birthmark. How is this possible? Vittorio's voice cut through the doctor's nostalgia. We were told everyone died. We were told the fire. The fire was meant to kill her. Dr. Mariani's hand dropped away from Isabella's face. And it nearly did. But I got to her first. The silence that followed was deafening. Explain. Vittorio's voice had dropped to something dangerous. Now. I was there that night. At the estate. I had been treating Maria Ferraro for a heart condition. Dr. Mariani's voice was growing distant, lost in memory. When the attack started, I was in the back of the house. I heard the explosions, the gunfire. I knew immediately what was happening. Everyone in our world knew about the threat from the Ricci family. Ricci. The name came from Vittorio's throat like a curse. Salvatore Ricci's father ordered the attack. Revenge for some slight, real or imagined. He wanted the entire Ferraro bloodline extinguished. Dr. Mariani paused. I found Angelina in the East Wing. She was unconscious. A beam had fallen, struck her head. There was so much smoke, so much chaos. Everyone assumed she was dead or dying. But I knew she was alive. I could feel her pulse. So you took her. I had no choice. If I left her there, the Ricci soldiers would have finished her off. If I tried to save her openly, they would have hunted her down. The only way she could survive was if everyone, believed she had died in the fire. Isabella's legs gave out. She would have fallen, but Vittorio caught her, his arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her against his chest. Breathe, he murmured against her hair. Just breathe. She was badly injured, Dr. Mariani continued. The head trauma was severe. I treated her in secret, kept her hidden for weeks. When she finally woke up, she had no memory. None at all. She didn't know her name, her family, her past. She didn't even recognize her own face in a mirror. And her eyes. Vittorio's voice was tight. Damaged in the fire. The smoke, the heat. There was nothing I could do. I'm sorry. Isabella was trembling, shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. Everything she thought she knew about herself was crumbling. You left her, Vittorio said, and now his voice was ice. Pure, frozen rage. You saved her life and then you abandoned her. I had no choice. You had every choice. You could have come to me. You could have told me she was alive. Instead you what? Staged a car accident? Left her to be found by strangers with no memory. No identity, no. If I had come to you, you would have brought her back into your world. Dr. Mariani's voice had gained an edge. You would have made her a defalco. You would have painted a target on her back that no one could remove. The Riccis were still hunting survivors. They had spies everywhere. The only way, Angelina could be safe was if she ceased to exist. That wasn't your decision to make. No? Then whose was it? Her parents were dead. Her family was slaughtered. She had no one left except me. And you. The doctor's voice dropped. And you, Vittorio. You were already becoming what you are now. The man they call Il Diavolo. The devil himself. Would that life have been better for her? Truly? Vittorio's arms tightened around Isabella. She felt the tension in his body, the coiled rage, the decade of grief and guilt suddenly given a target. She was mine to protect. She was a child caught between monsters. Dr. Mariani's voice was tired now. Old. Ready for whatever came next. I did what I thought was right. If you want to kill me for it, I won't resist. I've been waiting for this day for 10 years. Isabella pushed away from Vittorio's chest. Her hands found his arms, gripped them. Don't, she whispered. He took you from me. He saved me. Isabella's voice was stronger now, steadier. If what he says is true, If I really am this woman, Angelina, then he saved my life. He made a choice in an impossible situation. You can hate that choice. You can hate him. But I'm standing here, alive, because of what he did. Vittorio's breathing was ragged. She could feel his heartbeat through his chest. Fast, hard, furious. You don't understand what we had. What you were to me. Then tell me. Isabella reached up, her fingers finding his face, tracing the hard line of his jaw. Don't tell him. Tell me. Help me understand who I was. For a long moment, Vittorio didn't speak. His hands came up to cover hers, pressing her palms against his cheeks. You were everything, he said finally. You were the only person who ever saw past the monster to the man. You were kind when everyone around us was cruel. You were light when everything else was darkness. You believed in me when I had stopped believing in anything. Isabella's eyes, her useless, beautiful eyes, filled with tears again. And then you were gone. Vittorio's voice cracked. And I became exactly what everyone always said I would become. The monster, the devil, the man with no heart, because the only heart I had burned to ash 10 years ago. But I didn't burn. Isabella's voice was barely a whisper. I'm here. I'm alive. You're alive. Vittorio's forehead dropped to rest against hers. And I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to love you again when you don't remember loving me. Then we'll figure it out together. Isabella's thumbs brushed away tears she hadn't realized she was crying. Whoever I was then, whoever I am now, I want to know. I want to remember. And if I can't remember, I want to make new memories. With me. With you. The drive back to the estate was quiet. Isabella sat in the back seat, her hand in Vittorio's, their fingers intertwined. Neither of them spoke. There would be time for words later. Time for questions and answers and the slow, painful process of rebuilding what had been lost. For now, silence was enough. But as they pulled through the gates, Enzo was waiting in the drive. His posture told Isabella everything she needed to know. Something was wrong. What is it? Vittorio's voice had shifted instantly. From the raw, vulnerable man who had been holding her hand to the cold, calculating boss who commanded an empire. Salvatore Ricci. Enzo's voice was grim. He knows. Knows what? That you found her. That she's alive. Enzo paused. He's called a meeting. Tomorrow night. He wants to discuss mutual interests regarding the Ferraro inheritance. Vittorio went very still. The Ferraro inheritance. Marco Ferraro had a clause in his will. If any direct heir survived, they would inherit everything, the legitimate businesses, the properties, the accounts. Everything the Riccis claimed they were entitled to when the family was extinct. Enzo's voice hardened. If Isabella is proven to be Angelina Ferraro, the Riccis lose access to hundreds of millions of euros. So they'll try to kill her. Yes. Isabella's hand tightened on Vittorio's. No. Vittorio's voice was absolute. Final. The voice of a man who had lost everything once and would burn the world before losing it again. They won't touch her. They won't even look at her. Vittorio. Double the security. Triple it. I want eyes on every approach to this estate. I want men on Ricci's people. I want to know what he eats for breakfast and who he calls before he goes to sleep. Vittorio helped Isabella out of the car, his arm wrapping protectively around her waist. And Enzo. Yes. Find out how he learned she was alive. Someone talked. Someone betrayed us. Vittorio's voice dropped to something barely human. When you find them, bring them to me. That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. The revelation of who she was or who she might be made rest impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she tried to reach for memories that weren't there. Tried to remember roses in a garden, a white dress with blue flowers, a young man she had once loved enough to sneak out at midnight. But there was nothing, just darkness, just the endless, impenetrable darkness that had defined her life for 9 years. She rose from bed, found her cane, and made her way to the door. She had memorized the route to the library by now, 23 steps to the main hallway, a left turn, 40 steps to the staircase, down one flight, another left, and then the distinctive smell of old books would guide her the rest of the way. But when she reached the library, she wasn't alone. "Can't sleep either?" Vittorio's voice came from somewhere near the window. Isabella heard the clink of ice against glass. "No." She moved into the room carefully, finding a chair near the fireplace by the warmth radiating from it. "Too much to think about. Would you like a drink? What are you having?" "Whiskey." 25-year-old Macallan. "But I have other options if—" "Whiskey is fine." She heard him move. Footsteps crossing to a cabinet, liquid pouring, ice clinking, and then he was beside her, pressing a cool glass into her hand. "Thank you." She took a sip. The whiskey was smooth, warm, spreading heat through her chest. "Is this what you do? Sit alone in the dark and drink?" "Usually." A pause. "But I prefer your company." Isabella smiled despite everything. "You barely know me. I know you better than you know yourself." His voice was quiet. "I know you were afraid of thunderstorms but pretended not to be. I know you loved poetry but were embarrassed to admit it. I know you used to bite your thumbnail when you were nervous, and you're doing it right now." Isabella realized with a start that her thumb was indeed near her mouth. She pulled it away, flushing. "How can I be someone I don't remember? Memory isn't what makes us who we are." Vittorio's voice was closer now. He must have moved to sit near her. "You're still brave. You're still stubborn. You still say exactly what you're thinking without worrying about consequences. Those things didn't disappear because your memories did. But I feel like a stranger." Isabella set down her whiskey glass. "To you. To myself. I don't know how to be Angelina Ferraro. I only know how to be Isabella Marino. And apparently, she never really existed. She exists." Vittorio's hand found hers in the darkness. "She's right here. And whether you call yourself Isabella or Angelina, whether you ever remember the past or not, you're real. You matter. You." He broke off. "What?" Isabella turned toward him. "What were you going to say?" The silence stretched. When Vittorio spoke again, his voice was rough with emotion he was clearly unused to expressing. "You're the only person in 10 years who has made me feel anything other than anger or numbness. You walked into that train station, walked directly into me, and suddenly I was 28 again. I was standing in a garden, watching a girl with hazel eyes tell me that she wasn't afraid of the monster everyone else saw, that she saw something worth loving." Isabella's breath caught. "I've done terrible things since that night." Vittorio's grip on her hand tightened. "I've become everything you once believed I wasn't. I've killed. I've destroyed. I've built an empire on fear because I had nothing left to build it on except rage." "Vittorio, let me finish." His voice cracked. If someday you remember who I used to be, I need you to know that man is gone. I can't be him again. The last 10 years have made me into something darker, something harder. If that's not something you can accept, stop." Isabella reached out, her free hand finding his face. She traced the hard line of his jaw, the stubble, the tension in his clenched muscles. "I'm not the same girl from your garden either," she said quietly. "I've spent 9 years in darkness, 9 years alone, 9 years believing no one would ever know me, really know me, because the person I was before the accident was gone forever." Her thumb brushed across his cheekbone. "But today, a stranger whispered my name in a crowded train station, and even though I didn't recognize the word, something in me responded. Something in me knew." "Knew what?" "That I was found." Isabella's voice trembled. "That somehow, impossibly, after all this time, I was finally found." Vittorio made a sound low in his throat. His free hand came up to cup her face, tilting it toward him. "Stellina." The word again. The word from the train station. The word that had frozen time. "What does it mean?" Isabella whispered. "You said it when I bumped into you. Everyone reacted like you'd said something impossible. It means little star." Vittorio's thumb traced the curve of her cheek. "It's what I used to call you. What I called you every time we met in secret. Because even in the darkest times, you were the one point of light I could navigate by." Tears slipped down Isabella's cheeks. I don't remember being your little star. Then I'll remind you. Vittorio's forehead pressed against hers. Every day, if you'll let me, I'll tell you every story. I'll show you every photograph. I'll take you to every place we ever went together. And if you never remember, if the memories never come back, I'll love you enough for both of us. You barely know the person I am now. Then let me learn. His lips brushed against her forehead, gentle, achingly tender. Let me earn the right to love you again. I have nothing to offer except this. I will protect you with my life. I will burn anyone who tries to hurt you. I will build a wall around you so high that no Ricci, no enemy, no shadow from the past will ever touch you again. And if I don't want walls? Isabella's voice was barely audible. If I want a partner instead of a protector? If I want to stand beside you instead of behind you? Vittorio was silent for a long moment. You always did ask for the impossible. You always found a way to give it to me. The words came out before Isabella could stop them. Natural, instinctive, like they had been waiting beneath the surface of her consciousness for a decade. Vittorio went completely still. What did you say? Isabella frowned. I don't know. It just came out. Those were your words. Exactly your words. His voice was strange, tight, wondering. The last night we were together, the night before the attack, you said those exact words. I asked you to run away with me, to leave our families and their wars behind. You said I was asking for the impossible. And I said, I'll find a way. I always do. Isabella whispered the words without knowing where they came from. For you, Stellina, I'll find a way. Vittorio's hands were shaking. You remember. I don't. I can't. Isabella pressed her palms against her temples. It's like hearing an echo. The words are there, but the memory isn't. I know what I said, but I don't remember saying it. It doesn't matter. Vittorio pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her. It doesn't matter if you remember consciously. Some part of you knows. Some part of you has always known. His voice was rough with emotion. We'll find the rest. We'll find all of it. I promise you. Isabella buried her face against his chest. Beneath the expensive fabric of his shirt, she could feel his heart beating, strong, steady, alive. For the first time in 9 years, she didn't feel alone. The next morning came too soon. Isabella was woken by Julia, whose voice held an unusual tension. Signorina, Signor De Falco requests your presence in his study. There have been developments. Isabella dressed quickly, declining Julia's help with the familiarity of long practice. She had chosen her own clothing for 9 years. She could manage now despite the unfamiliarity of the borrowed wardrobe. 20 minutes later, she entered the study. The room was crowded. She could tell by the sound of breathing, the subtle shifts of bodies, the multiple heartbeats that seemed to fill the space. Isabella. Vittorio's voice came from directly ahead. Come. Sit. He guided her to a chair, soft leather, warm from proximity to a fireplace, and then remained standing beside her. A position of protection. A message to everyone in the room. What's happening? We've identified the leak. Enzo's voice came from somewhere to her right. It was Dr. Mariani. He made a phone call yesterday evening after you left, to a contact connected to the Ricci family. Isabella's stomach dropped. He told them about me? He told them you're alive. He told them you're here. Enzo paused. And he told them that Vittorio has been investigating the Ferraro inheritance, which means he believes you're the legitimate heir. We have to assume Salvatore Ricci now has all the same information we do, Vittorio said. His hand rested on Isabella's shoulder. A warm, steadying pressure. He knows who you are. He knows what you're worth. And he knows that if you're confirmed as Angelina Ferraro, his family loses everything they stole from yours 10 years ago. So he'll come for me. Yes. Isabella nodded slowly. The fear was there, cold and sharp in her chest. But beneath it was something else. Something harder. Then let him come. Silence. I'm sorry. Vittorio's voice was carefully controlled. I said let him come. Isabella stood, her chin lifting despite the fact that she couldn't see any of the people she was addressing. For 10 years, I've been a ghost. An anonymous woman with no past, no family, no identity. But if what you're telling me is true, if I really am Angelina Ferraro, then that means the people who destroyed my family, who stole my inheritance, who left me blind and alone and broken, they're still out there. Still living off the wealth they took from corpses. Isabella. No. Her voice was sharp. I'm done being a victim. I'm done being a tragedy. If Salvatore Ricci wants to finish what his father started, he's welcome to try. But I won't run. I won't hide. And I won't let him take anything else from me. The silence that followed was profound. Then, from somewhere across the room, a sound Isabella hadn't expected. A slow, approving chuckle. My God! The voice was female, elderly, rich with authority. She really is Maria's daughter. Isabella turned toward the voice. Who are you? Footsteps approached. Measured, elegant, accompanied by the soft tap of what might have been a cane. I am Lucia de Falco. The woman's voice came from directly in front of Isabella now. Vittorio's grandmother. And I have been waiting a very long time to meet the woman who turned my grandson into a human being again. Isabella felt delicate fingers take her hand. Old fingers, thin but surprisingly strong. You know who I am? I knew who you were the moment Vittorio called me 3 days ago. Lucia's voice softened. He said, Nana, I found her. Just those words. And I knew. I knew because my grandson has not sounded hopeful, truly hopeful, in over a decade. I don't remember any of you. That's all right, child. We remember you. Lucia's fingers squeezed hers. And now that you're back, we're gonna make sure you stay back. The Riccis have had their time. They've spent 10 years enjoying what they stole. But that ends now. How? Lucia released her hand. When she spoke again, her voice had gained an edge. The edge of a woman who had survived a lifetime in a world of wolves. We're going to prove who you are. Not just to our family, but to the authorities, the courts, the world. We're going to take back every euro, every property, every piece of the Ferraro legacy that Salvatore Ricci has been bleeding dry. And when he comes for you, because he will, make no mistake, we're going to destroy him so completely that the Ricci name becomes a cautionary tale parents tell their children. Isabella found herself smiling despite everything. You sound like you've been planning this for a while. 10 years. Lucia's voice was cold. I've been planning this for 10 years. I always believed Angelina Ferraro was alive. The fire never felt right. The timing was too convenient. And when no body was ever found. She paused. A grandmother learns to trust her instincts. Mine told me that somewhere, somehow that girl had survived. And now she's here. Vittorio's voice came from beside Isabella. And nothing is going to take her away again. The days that followed were a blur of activity. Lawyers arrived from Milan, Rome, Naples. DNA tests were conducted. Old photographs were examined. Witnesses from the Ferraro household, servants who had survived the attack, distant relatives who had fled the country, were located and questioned. Through it all, Isabella remained at the center of a storm she couldn't see but could feel in every nerve. And through it all, Vittorio remained by her side. He explained every document. He described every photograph. He translated every legal term into language she could understand. He became her eyes in a world that suddenly seemed far more complicated than anything she had imagined. At night, they sat together in the library, sometimes talking, sometimes simply existing in each other's presence. He told her stories of their past, the garden where they had met, the books they had shared, the future they had planned before everything burned. We were going to run away, he said one evening, his voice soft in the darkness. After your 18th birthday, I had arranged everything. False papers, a house in the south of France, enough money to disappear. We were going to leave our families, leave the violence, leave everything. Start fresh somewhere no one knew our names. What happened? The attack came 3 days before your birthday. Vittorio's voice hardened. 3 days. If I had moved faster, if I had gotten you out earlier, then you would have been running forever. Isabella found his hand, laced her fingers through his. And I might have been looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. Instead you spent a decade alone. Blind. Broken. Not broken. Isabella squeezed his hand. Surviving. There's a difference. Vittorio was quiet for a long moment. I don't deserve you, he said finally. You should hate me. You should blame me for everything that happened. If I hadn't loved you, if we hadn't been meeting in secret, then I would have died in that fire. The only reason I was in the East Wing, the only reason Dr. Mariani found me, was because I was going to our meeting place. Isabella turned toward him, her free hand finding his face. Our love saved my life, Vittorio. It didn't destroy it. I want to believe that. Then believe it. Her thumb traced the line of his jaw. I'm here. I'm alive. And whatever comes next, whatever Salvatore Ricci tries, we'll face it together. The confirmation came on the 7th day. DNA analysis, dental records, testimony from 7 independent witnesses. A birthmark that had been photographed in infancy and matched perfectly to the mark below Isabella's ear. There was no longer any question. Isabella Marino was Angelina Ferraro, the sole surviving heir to the Ferraro fortune. And as of this moment, the legal owner of properties, accounts, and business interests worth over 400 million euros. Congratulations, Lucia said, her voice dry. You're now one of the wealthiest women in Italy, and also one of the most endangered. They were gathered in Vittorio's study. Isabella, Vittorio, Lucia, Enzo, and a team of lawyers who had been working around the clock. The air was thick with tension. Salvatore Ricci received official notification of the claim this morning. One of the lawyers reported. He has 24 hours to respond before we begin formal proceedings to recover all Ferraro assets. He won't go quietly, Enzo said. The man has built his entire empire on money that isn't his. If he loses access to the Ferraro inheritance, he'll be ruined, Lucia finished. Which means he'll be desperate. Which means he'll be dangerous. Let him be. Vittorio's voice was calm. Too calm. The calm of a predator preparing to strike. I've spent 10 years watching Salvatore Ricci enjoy the fruits of genocide. I've been patient. I've been strategic. I've been waiting for the right moment. He paused. This is the moment. Isabella felt the shift in the room. The lawyers went still. Even Lucia seemed to hold her breath. What are you planning? Isabella asked. Vittorio didn't answer directly. Instead, he turned to Enzo. The meeting Ricci requested. Tomorrow night. Where? His estate outside Rome. He's claiming neutral ground, but it's a trap. Obviously. Vittorio nodded slowly. Then we spring it. I'll attend the meeting. Alone. No. The word came from Isabella before she could stop it. Absolutely not. Isabella. Don't. She stood, her hands shaking. Don't you dare try to sacrifice yourself for me. I just found you. I just learned who I am, who we were. You don't get to walk into an obvious trap and expect me to. Vittorio was suddenly there. His hands on her shoulders, his forehead pressed against hers. I'm not sacrificing myself. I'm ending this. His voice was low, intense. Ricci has been a threat for too long. He'll never stop coming for you, not as long as he's alive. The only way you'll ever be safe is if he's neutralized permanently. Then we neutralize him together. Isabella. I'm serious. She gripped the front of his shirt. I may not remember our past, but I know this. You and I work as a team. We have from the beginning. You're not my protector. You're my partner. And partners don't send each other into ambushes alone. The silence stretched. Then, incredibly, Vittorio laughed. You're just as impossible as you used to be. I prefer determined. I know you do. He kissed her forehead, gentle, achingly tender. All right, together. But you follow my lead. And if things go wrong, they won't. If they do, you run. You let Enzo get you out. Promise me. Isabella considered arguing. Considered reminding him that she didn't make promises she had no intention of keeping. But the desperation in his voice, the naked fear of losing her again, stopped her. I promise. She felt him relax slightly. Then let's plan how to destroy Salvatore Ricci. The estate outside Rome was everything Isabella had expected and nothing she could see. She felt the difference the moment they passed through the gates. The shift from public roads to private grounds, the weight of surveillance in the air, the tension that radiated from everyone around her. Vittorio had brought a small army. 20 men, all armed, all positioned at strategic points around the property. Enzo walked 3 steps behind them, his hand never far from his weapon. Even Lucia had come, though she remained in one of the cars. Too old for gunfights, she had said. But not too old to witness the fall of that bastard's empire. We're approaching the main entrance, Enzo murmured. Isabella felt Vittorio's hand tighten on hers. The tattoos on his knuckles, honor y verit, pressed against her palm like a silent promise. They entered the building. Isabella tracked the journey through sound and sensation. The echo of their footsteps on marble floors, the rustle of expensive fabrics, the murmur of voices that fell silent as they approached. And then a new voice, oily, cultured, radiating false warmth. Vittorio de Falco, what an honor. And you've brought… Ah, yes, the Ferraro girl, Salvatore Ricci. Isabella felt Vittorio go rigid beside her. Ricci. Vittorio's voice was ice. Thank you for the invitation. Please, make yourselves comfortable. The sounds of movement, chairs being pulled out, servants departing. Wine? Whiskey? Something for the lady. We're not here to socialize. No, I suppose not. Ricci's voice had shifted, the false warmth giving way to something colder. You're here to discuss the unfortunate matter of the Ferraro inheritance. A matter which, I must say, I find rather surprising. Surprising? My family has been managing the Ferraro assets for 10 years. We believed, as did everyone, that the bloodline was extinct. And now, suddenly, a blind woman appears claiming to be the sole surviving heir. Ricci laughed softly. You must understand my skepticism. Your skepticism is irrelevant. Isabella spoke before Vittorio could. The DNA evidence is irrefutable. The legal documentation is complete. As of this morning, I am the recognized heir to the Ferraro estate. Your management of my family's assets ends now. Silence. When Ricci spoke again, his voice had lost all pretense of civility. You're making a mistake, Signorina. A very serious mistake. The Ferraro fortune has been integrated into my family's operations for a decade. Extracting it would be complicated, expensive, perhaps even impossible. Nothing is impossible, Isabella said. That's one thing I've learned. Has Vittorio been teaching you his philosophy? Ricci's chair creaked as he shifted. How touching. The blind woman and the beast. It's almost romantic, except for the part where it's going to end very badly for both of you. Vittorio's voice was dangerously quiet. Is that a threat? A prediction? Ricci's voice moved. He was standing now, circling the table. You see, I've spent 10 years building something on the foundation of the Ferraro fortune. I've made allies, investments, commitments, and none of them will be very happy if some long-lost heiress suddenly appears to claim what I've already promised them. That sounds like a you problem, Isabella said. Ricci laughed. A cold, unpleasant sound. I like her, Vittorio. She has spirit. It almost makes me regret what comes next. The sound of weapons being drawn filled the room. Isabella felt Vittorio pull her behind him, his body becoming a shield. You really thought I'd walk into an obvious trap without preparation? Ricci's voice was closer now, too close. My men have been in position since you arrived. Your 20 guards are currently surrounded by 60 of mine. And in approximately 30 seconds, this room is going to become a very unpleasant place. You'd start a war. I'd finish a war. The war your pathetic obsession with a dead woman has been building toward for 10 years. Ricci's voice dropped to a whisper. Did you really think I didn't know about your little investigation? Your secret searches for survivors? Your refusal to accept what everyone else understood? That Angelina Ferraro died in that fire. She didn't die. No, apparently not. Ricci's voice hardened. But she will tonight. And so will you. And when the smoke clears, I'll make sure the story is exactly what it needs to be. A tragic misunderstanding. A case of mistaken identity. A blind woman who thought she was something she wasn't, led astray by a madman's grief. Isabella's heart was pounding. But beneath the fear, something else was rising. Anger. Cold, crystalline, clarifying anger. You talk too much, she said. The room went silent. Excuse me? You talk too much. Isabella stepped out from behind Vittorio, ignoring his hiss of protest. You've spent the last 5 minutes explaining your plan. Why you're going to win. How clever you've been. How doomed we are. She smiled. A cold, sharp smile she hadn't known she was capable of. If you were really confident, you wouldn't need to justify yourself. You dare. I dare everything. Isabella's voice rang through the room. I survived a massacre that killed my entire family. I survived a decade of blindness and isolation. I survived losing every memory of the person I used to be. And you think I'm afraid of you? Of your guns and your threats and your sad little monologues? She took another step forward. My name is Angelina Ferraro. My family built an empire that yours has been leeching off for 10 years. And tonight, whether you kill me or not, that ends. Because even if I die in this room, the documentation is already filed. The claim is already processed. And your 60 guards won't stop the truth from becoming public record. The silence stretched. Then Ricci laughed. But there was an edge to it now. An uncertainty. You're bluffing. Am I? Isabella's smile widened. Pull the trigger and find out. What happened next happened fast. Later, Isabella would piece together the sequence from Vittorio's account. The explosion that shattered the windows. The second team, Enzo's backup, breaching from multiple entry points. The chaos of gunfire and shouting and bodies hitting the floor. But in the moment, all she knew was this. Vittorio wrapped himself around her, protected her with his body, took a bullet that had been meant for her heart. She felt the impact, the jerk of his body, the grunt of pain. Vittorio, I'm fine. His voice was strained but steady. It's just my shoulder. Stay down. The fighting lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, Salvatore Ricci was in handcuffs, alive as per Isabella's instructions, and the Ricci compound was under DeFalco control. But Isabella barely noticed. She was kneeling beside Vittorio, her hands pressed against his shoulder, feeling the warm wetness of his blood seeping through her fingers. You're not fine. You're bleeding. I've had worse. I don't care what you've had. Her voice cracked. You took a bullet for me. I'd take 100. His hand found her face, his uninjured hand, and cupped her cheek. I told you. I'd burn the world before I let anyone hurt you. You're an idiot. Probably. I'm in love with you. The words came out before she could stop them. Natural. Inevitable. True in a way that transcended memory. Vittorio went very still beneath her hands. You don't remember me, he said carefully. I don't need to remember you. Isabella leaned down, pressing her forehead against his. I know you. I know the man who whispered my name in a crowded train station. I know the man who brought me to his home instead of letting me disappear again. I know the man who told me stories every night and held my hand through DNA tests and legal proceedings, and the moment I learned who I really was. She kissed him, carefully, aware of his injury, but with all the emotion she could put into the gesture. I love you, Vittorio DeFalco, not because I remember loving you 10 years ago, because I choose to love you now. His arms came around her, both arms, despite the bullet wound that should have made movement impossible, and pulled her close. Stellina, he breathed against her lips. My Stellina, my light, my everything. And somewhere in the chaos of that moment, surrounded by the debris of battle, the aftermath of revenge, the beginning of a new future, Isabella felt something shift, a barrier breaking, a door opening, and suddenly, without warning, she could see. Not with her eyes remained dark, would always remain dark. But in her mind, images were flooding back. A garden filled with roses, a young man with steel-gray eyes, looking at her like she was the only thing in the world worth seeing. A voice, his voice, whispering Stelina against her hair. A promise. I'll find a way. I always do. For you, Stelina, I'll find a way. Isabella gasped. What is it? Vittorio's voice was sharp with concern. Are you hurt? Did someone? I remember. The words came out as barely more than a whisper. Vittorio, I remember. What do you? Everything. Tears were streaming down her face now. The garden. The books. The white dress with blue flowers. The night you asked me to run away with you. Her hands found his face, tracing the features she had once known as well as her own. I remember you. Vittorio made a sound she had never heard from him before. Something between a laugh and a sob. How? The doctors said. I don't know how. I don't care how. Isabella kissed him again. Harder this time, pouring every recovered memory into the gesture. I just know that I remember. All of it. And I know that I've loved you my whole life. The life I remember and the life I forgot. And I'm never going to stop. And this is where I must pause our story, my dear listeners. Isabella has recovered her memories. Vittorio has protected her with his own body. Salvatore Ricci is in custody. The Ferraro inheritance has been claimed. But there are still wounds to heal. Still truths to uncover. Still a future to build from the ashes of the past. In the second part of our story, you'll discover what really happened the night of the fire, and who else was involved in Angelina's disappearance. The choice Isabella must make between her old identity and her new one. The final confrontation that will determine whether love can truly survive impossible circumstances. And the secret Lucia de Falco has been keeping for 10 years. A secret that will change everything. But for now, picture this. A blind woman, kneeling in the wreckage of her enemy's stronghold. A wounded man, holding her like she's the only thing anchoring him to the earth. Two people separated by fire and time and loss, finally impossibly together. And somewhere in the darkness, a voice. The heart remembers. Even when the mind forgets. Even when hope dies. The heart remembers. The helicopter came 40 minutes later. Enzo had radioed for medical evacuation the moment the shooting stopped. By the time the aircraft landed on the Ricci compound's lawn, Vittorio had lost enough blood to make Isabella's hands shake with something beyond fear. He needs surgery, the medic reported, his voice professional but concerned. The bullet is lodged near the shoulder blade. It needs to come out. Then get it out. We will, Signorina. But now. Isabella's voice brooked no argument. He saved my life. You will save his. Whatever resources you need, whatever specialists, whatever facilities, consider them already procured. The medic exchanged a glance with someone Isabella couldn't see. A moment of silent communication. Understood, Signorina. They tried to separate her from Vittorio during the flight to Milan. Isabella refused. She sat beside the stretcher, her hand wrapped around his. Her body curved toward him like a compass needle pointing north. You should rest, Vittorio murmured, his voice weak but still stubborn. You've been through. Be quiet. I'm just saying. I said be quiet. Isabella's grip tightened. You took a bullet for me. You don't get to tell me what I should do for at least the next decade. A rough sound that might have been a laugh. Only a decade? We'll renegotiate after that. Vittorio's free hand found her face, tracing her cheek, her jaw, her lips. Even drugged and bleeding, he touched her like she was precious, like she was sacred. I never stopped loving you, he whispered. The night they told me you were dead, I felt something in me die too. Everything good, everything soft, everything that made me capable of being anything other than a monster. Vittorio, let me finish. His fingers brushed away tears she hadn't realized she was crying. I spent 10 years hating myself, hating the world, hating everyone who got to live when you didn't. And then you walked into that train station, walked directly into me, and I looked at your face and I knew. Knew what? That everything I believed was wrong, that you were alive, that somewhere, somehow, fate had given us another chance. His voice cracked. I don't deserve it. I don't deserve you. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to. Isabella leaned down, pressing her lips against his forehead. You've already earned it, she whispered. 10 years ago, you fell in love with a girl who saw past the monster to the man. Tonight, that same man threw himself in front of a bullet to protect her. That's not something you earn, Vittorio. It's something you are. The surgery took 4 hours. Isabella waited in a private room that Enzo had secured. A room with comfortable chairs and soft lighting, and a window that looked out over the Milan skyline. Not that she could see any of it. The darkness remained constant, familiar, almost comforting. But now the darkness held memories. She sat with her eyes closed, letting the recovered past wash over her. The garden where she and Vittorio had first met. She had been 15, he had been 23, and even then she had known he was dangerous. Even then she had looked at him and seen something worth knowing. Their first conversation. She had asked about the tattoos on his arms, the ones he'd been trying to hide under a jacket that didn't quite cover them. He had told her they were reminders. She had asked, of what? And he had said, of the person I don't want to become. Their first kiss. In a library, surrounded by books that smelled of dust and secrets. He had been telling her about his mother, how she had died when he was young, how he still missed her every day, and Isabella had risen on her toes and pressed her lips against his before she could think better of it. His expression afterward. Stunned. Vulnerable. Like she had somehow given him a gift he had never expected to receive. You shouldn't do that, he had whispered. Why not? Because if you keep looking at me like I'm worth loving, I might start to believe it. Isabella had smiled. The same smile she still wore. The same smile she hadn't known she'd been carrying through 10 years of darkness. Good, she had said. That was the plan. The surgery was successful. The voice pulled Isabella from her memories. She turned toward it, Enzo, his footsteps recognizable by now. He's going to be all right? He's going to be fine. The bullet is out. The damage was minimal, all things considered. Enzo paused. He's asking for you. Isabella stood immediately. Take me to him. The recovery room was quiet, filled with the soft beep of monitoring equipment. Isabella navigated by sound until she found the bed, then reached out until her fingers encountered the familiar shape of Vittorio's hand. You're awake. Takes more than one bullet to keep me down. His voice was raspy, tired, but unmistakably his. I've had worse. So you keep saying. Isabella found the edge of the bed and sat carefully. But maybe we could aim for a future with fewer near-death experiences. No promises. His hand turned in hers, their fingers intertwining. How are you feeling? The memories. They're still there. All of them, I think. Isabella paused, searching for words. It's strange. I feel like two people at once. Isabella, who lived in darkness for 9 years and built a life from nothing. And Angelina, who loved you so fiercely that even losing everything couldn't make that love disappear. Are they in conflict? No. Isabella smiled. They're starting to merge, like two rivers joining into one. Isabella's strength, Angelina's heart, both of them yours. Vittorio was quiet for a moment. Which name do you want to use? Going forward? Isabella considered. It was a question she had been asking herself since the memories returned. She had spent nearly a decade as Isabella Marino. That name had survived blindness, isolation, the slow rebuilding of an entire identity from scratch. But Angelina Ferraro was who she had been born, who her parents had named, who Vittorio had fallen in love with in a garden filled with roses. Both, she said finally. I'm Isabella Angelina Marino Ferraro. Or maybe just Isabella DeFalco eventually if you ask nicely. Vittorio's breath caught. Isabella. Too soon. She kept her voice light, but her heart was pounding. I know we've technically only known each other for a week. From your perspective, at least. From mine, it's been a lifetime. 2 lifetimes. Yes. The word cut through her rambling like a blade. Yes, what? Yes, I'll ask nicely. Vittorio's voice was rough with emotion. In fact, I'm asking now. Tonight, in this ridiculous hospital room, wearing a gown that shows my ass, with a hole in my shoulder and barely enough drugs in my system to keep the pain at bay. His hand tightened around hers. Isabella Angelina Marino Ferraro? Will you marry me? Isabella's eyes filled with tears. You're proposing in a hospital gown? I've waited 10 years. I'm not waiting another second. His free hand found her face, cupping her cheek. I know you can't see the ring. I'll get you one, the most beautiful ring in Italy, but right now I need to know. I need to hear you say it. The answer is yes. Isabella's voice broke on the word. The answer has been yes since I was 15 years old. Standing in a garden, looking at a man covered in tattoos and wondering why I felt like I'd finally found home. Vittorio pulled her down to him, carefully, mindful of his shoulder, and kissed her. It was different from the kiss in the wreckage, different from any kiss they'd shared before. This one was gentle, reverent, the kind of kiss that made promises without words. When they finally separated, Isabella was crying and laughing at the same time. Lucia is going to be insufferable, she managed. She's already insufferable. This will just give her something to be insufferable about. And Enzo will pretend to be stoic and then cry at the wedding. I've known him for 22 years. He's a secret romantic. Isabella laughed. A real laugh, full and free, the kind she hadn't known she was capable of. I love you. I love you too. Vittorio's thumb traced her cheek. Now and forever, through darkness and light, through whatever comes next. Whatever comes next, Isabella repeated. Together. 2 weeks later, the legal proceedings against Salvatore Ricci began. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records documenting a decade of embezzlement, testimony from former Ricci employees, the recovered footage from the night at his compound showing him threatening Isabella's life. But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source. Dr. Mariani. The elderly physician had been apprehended within hours of his betrayal, held in comfortable but secure accommodations while Lucia de Falco debated his fate. In the end, it was Isabella who made the final decision. Let him testify, she had said. He made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but he also saved my life. The least he can do is help me reclaim it. Dr. Mariani's testimony was devastating. He described the night of the attack in excruciating detail. The flames, the screams, the systematic slaughter of everyone bearing the Ferraro name. He explained how he had found the teenage Angelina unconscious in the East Wing and made the split-second decision to save her by making her disappear. I knew the Riccis would hunt survivors, he said, his voice cracking. I knew they would never stop. The only way Angelina could live was if Angelina ceased to exist. And the blindness? The prosecutor asked. The memory loss? Consequences of her injuries. The trauma to her brain caused amnesia. The damage to her optic nerves caused permanent vision loss. Dr. Mariani paused. I didn't choose those outcomes. But when they occurred, I realized they were beneficial. They made her unrecognizable, untraceable, safe. But not safe enough, Isabella interjected from her seat. Salvatore Ricci still found out who I was. Dr. Mariani's face crumpled. I made a mistake. After you left my house that day, I panicked. I called a contact, someone I thought I could trust, and told them you were alive. I didn't know he was connected to the Riccis. I didn't know. You didn't know, Isabella repeated. But I'm the one who almost died because of it. The courtroom was silent. In the end, Salvatore Ricci was sentenced to life imprisonment. His assets were seized. His organization was dismantled. The Ricci name, which had inspired fear for 3 generations, became exactly what Lucia had predicted. A cautionary tale. But for Isabella, the real victory came after the verdict was announced. Vittorio was waiting for her outside the courthouse, his injured shoulder still bandaged but his posture unmistakably protective. He guided her through the crowd of reporters, his hands steady on her back, his voice a low murmur of reassurance. It's done. It's done, Isabella agreed. Ricci is finished. The inheritance is secured. My family is finally avenged. And now, Isabella turned toward him. She couldn't see his face, but she knew every line of it by heart, both from memory and from the hours she'd spent tracing it with her fingers. Now we start living. The wedding took place 3 months later. It was small by DeFalco standards, only 200 guests, held in the garden of the Milan estate where Isabella had been staying since the trial. Roses bloomed everywhere, their scent filling the air with memories. Isabella wore white. Not the white dress with blue flowers from her youth. That dress had burned along with everything else, but something new. Something chosen for the woman she was now. Vittorio stood at the altar, waiting. His grandmother had reportedly threatened him with severe consequences if he showed any emotion during the ceremony. He ignored her completely. When Isabella appeared at the end of the aisle, guided by Enzo, Vittorio's composure shattered. Tears streamed down his face. The face of a man who had waited 10 years for this moment, who had believed it would never come, who was finally allowing himself to believe in happiness again. The ceremony was traditional. The vows were not. "I promise to be your eyes when you need them," Vittorio said, his voice rough but steady. "Your shelter when the world is cold. Your light when the darkness feels endless. I promise to tell you stories every night, to describe every sunset, to make sure you never feel alone again. I promise to be your humanity when you forget it," Isabella replied. "Your peace when the violence becomes too much. Your anchor when the past threatens to pull you under. I promise to love the monster and the man, because I know they're the same person, and that person is worth everything I have to give." When they kissed, the garden erupted in applause. Lucia DeFalco sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, pretending she wasn't crying. Enzo stood beside the altar, his expression stoic, his eyes suspiciously bright. And somewhere in the back of the crowd, Dr. Mariani watched from a distance, pardoned by Isabella, but not quite welcomed, witnessing the happiness he had inadvertently helped create. That night, in the bridal suite of the estate, Isabella and Vittorio lay together in the darkness. His hands moved over her body with reverent gentleness, mapping the terrain of the woman he had waited a lifetime to love properly. Her fingers traced the tattoos she couldn't see but had memorized. The script on his neck, the lion on his forearm, the cathedral and roses that represented family and sacrifice. "Tell me what you see," she whispered. "You." His lips brushed against her shoulder. "Just you. The most beautiful thing I've ever looked at. Describe it." He did. Every detail, every curve and shadow, every way the candlelight played across her skin. He gave her his eyes, just as he had promised, painting a picture with words that made her feel more seen than she had ever felt in her life. When they finally came together, it was gentle, reverent, the consummation of a love that had survived fire and darkness and a decade of grief. Afterward, Isabella lay in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "No regrets?" she asked. "None." His hand moved through her hair, gentle and possessive. "You won." He tensed slightly. "What?" "I wish I could see your face right now." Isabella's voice was soft but not sad. "I remember what you looked like at 28. I've memorized every feature with my fingers. But I wish I could see you. Just once. Just for a moment." Vittorio was quiet for a long time. "There might be a way," he said finally. Isabella lifted her head. "What do you mean?" Vittorio's chest rose and fell beneath her cheek, his heartbeat steady but somehow charged with something she couldn't identify. "I wasn't going to mention it yet. I wanted to wait until after the wedding, until things were settled." His hand continued moving through her hair, but his voice had taken on a careful quality. "But there's a specialist, Dr. Sofia Romano. She's been working on experimental procedures for corneal damage, specifically the kind caused by trauma and smoke inhalation." Isabella's breath caught. "Vittorio, I'm not promising anything. The procedure is risky, experimental. There's no guarantee it would work." His arms tightened around her. "But I've had Enzo researching options since the day I found you. And Dr. Romano's work is the most promising. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to give you hope that might be crushed. Because I wanted you to marry me knowing that even if you never see again, I would love you exactly as you are. His voice dropped. Because I needed you to choose me without conditions. Isabella pushed herself up, her hands finding his face in the darkness. She traced the hard line of his jaw, the stubble, the tension in his muscles. You thought I might only marry you if you could fix my eyes? The thought crossed my mind. Vittorio de Falco. Her voice was fierce despite its softness. I fell in love with you twice, once when I could see and once when I couldn't. I said yes to your proposal in a hospital room when you were wearing a gown and bleeding through your bandages. I just promised to love you for the rest of my life, knowing that I might spend every moment of that life in darkness. Her thumbs brushed across his cheekbones. Do you really think I care whether I can see your face? No. His hands came up to cover hers. But I care. I want to give you everything, Stellina. Everything I have, everything I am, everything I can possibly offer. And if there's even a chance that I could give you back your sight, then we'll explore it. Together. Isabella leaned down, pressing her lips against his forehead. But not tonight. Tonight, I just want to be your wife. Tomorrow we can talk about specialists and procedures and possibilities. Right now, I want this moment. Just this. Vittorio pulled her back down against his chest. Just this, he agreed. For now. 3 days after the wedding, Isabella met Dr. Sofia Romano. The appointment took place in a private clinic in Florence, neutral ground, away from the De Falco estate and the weight of Vittorio's world. Isabella had insisted on that. If she was going to discuss her eyes, her body, her future, she wanted to do it in a space that felt like hers. Dr. Romano's voice was calm and professional, with an undertone of genuine warmth that Isabella appreciated. I've reviewed your medical history extensively, the doctor said. The damage to your corneas is significant, but not as severe as I initially expected. The original physicians who treated you were working with limited resources and outdated techniques. What does that mean? It means there's hope. Dr. Romano paused. The procedure I've developed involves a combination of corneal transplantation and stem cell therapy. It's designed specifically for patients whose vision loss was caused by trauma rather than genetic factors. What are the odds of success? Honestly, about 60%. The doctor's voice remained steady. That's significantly higher than any other option currently available, but it's not a guarantee. There's also a risk of complications, infection, rejection, worsening of your current condition. Isabella absorbed this information in silence. And if it works? If it works, you could regain significant visual function. Not perfect vision, you would likely still need corrective lenses, but enough to see faces, read, navigate independently. Dr. Romano leaned forward. You would be able to see your husband. The words hit Isabella like a physical blow. She had made peace with her blindness years ago, had built an entire identity around it, had learned to navigate the world through sound and touch and the careful cultivation of her other senses. But the idea of seeing Vittorio's face, not just remembering it, not just tracing it with her fingers, but actually seeing it, I need to think about it. Of course. Dr. Romano's voice was understanding. This isn't a decision to make lightly. Take all the time you need. That evening, Isabella sat alone in the garden of the Florence clinic, surrounded by the scent of roses and the sound of distant traffic. Vittorio was in Milan, handling business that had been neglected during the trial and wedding. Enzo was nearby, always nearby now, a constant protective presence. But he had given her space when she'd asked for it. She was thinking about sight, about darkness, about the woman she had become in the absence of light. You look troubled. The voice came from behind her, familiar, elderly, sharp with intelligence. Lucia. Isabella turned toward the sound. I didn't hear you arrive. That's because I'm sneaky. Lucia's footsteps approached, accompanied by the soft tap of her cane. I've been watching you for 10 minutes. You've been sitting there like a statue, staring at nothing. I'm always staring at nothing. That's rather the point. Lucia laughed, a dry, appreciative sound. My grandson chose well. You don't take any nonsense. I learned from the best. Isabella shifted to make room on the bench. How did you know I was here? Enzo reports to me. Everything that concerns my grandson concerns me. Lucia settled beside her with a soft grunt. Including the decision you're currently wrestling with. I haven't decided anything. No, but you're afraid. Lucia's hand found Isabella's, her grip surprisingly strong. Afraid that, if you can see again, everything will change. Afraid that the woman you've become in darkness might not survive in the light. Isabella's breath caught. How did you? Because I'm old, child. Old and wise and observant. Lucia squeezed her hand. I watched my grandson spend 10 years becoming a monster because he lost the only light in his life. I'm not going to watch his wife make a similar mistake. What mistake? Choosing darkness because it's familiar. Lucia's voice softened. Isabella, the woman you've become is extraordinary. Strong, capable, resilient. Nothing about regaining your sight would diminish that. But what if? What if you see Vittorio's face and don't love him anymore? Lucia laughed. Child, you fell in love with him when you could see. The sight of him didn't scare you then. It won't scare you now. That's not what I'm afraid of. Then what? Isabella was quiet for a long moment. I'm afraid of hope, she finally admitted. For 9 years, I made peace with my blindness. I stopped hoping for miracles. I built a life that didn't depend on things I couldn't have. Her voice cracked. And then Vittorio appeared, and suddenly everything changed. I have memories again. I have love again. I have a family and a future and more than I ever dared to dream. If I start hoping for my sight too, if I let myself want that, and it doesn't work, then you'll still have everything else. Lucia's voice was gentle but firm. Isabella, hope is not the enemy. Grief is. Fear is. The belief that we don't deserve good things. That is the true darkness. Her hand tightened. You have survived impossibilities. You have reclaimed your past and built a new future. You deserve to hope. You deserve to try. And if I fail? Then you fail surrounded by people who love you. You fail knowing that you were brave enough to reach for something beautiful. Lucia paused. That's not really failure. That's living. Isabella sat with those words for a long time. Finally, she spoke. Will you be there? For the procedure? If I decide to do it. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. Lucia's voice held a smile. I've been waiting 10 years to see my grandson truly happy. I'm not missing the moment when his wife looks at him for the first time in a decade. The procedure was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Those 6 weeks passed in a blur of preparations, consultations, and the slow deepening of Isabella's new life. She moved permanently into the Milan estate, learning its corridors and corners with the methodical precision she had developed over years of blindness. Vittorio was a constant presence, attentive without being smothering, protective without being controlling. He seemed to understand, instinctively, that she needed to maintain her independence even as she learned to lean on him. Tell me about today, she would say each evening, and he would describe everything. The color of the sky, the expression on Enzo's face during a business meeting, the way the light fell through the windows of his study. He was giving her his eyes, just as he had promised. The night before the surgery, they lay together in the darkness of their bedroom, Isabella's head on his chest, his fingers moving through her hair. Nervous, terrified, Isabella admitted. You, beyond measure. His arms tightened around her. I keep thinking about what happens if it works. If you can see again. If you look at me and what? And realize you married a monster. Isabella pushed herself up, her hands finding his face with practiced ease. Vittorio de Falco, look at me. You can't see me looking at you. I don't need to. I can feel it. Her thumbs traced his cheekbones. I know exactly what you look like. I've memorized every line, every angle, every scar. I've traced these tattoos 100 times. Her fingers moved to his neck, finding the script she knew by heart. Il cuor ricorda. The heart remembers. Isabella, my heart remembers you, not the man everyone else sees. The feared boss, the legend, the devil they whisper about in dark corners. My heart remembers the boy who fell in love with a girl in a garden. The man who spent 10 years grieving something he refused to stop believing in. The husband who took a bullet for me without hesitation. Her voice softened. That's who I married. That's who I'll see tomorrow, if the procedure works. And nothing will ever make me regret choosing you. Vittorio made a sound low in his throat. Something between a laugh and a sob. How do you do that? Do what? Make me believe I might actually deserve you. Because you do. Isabella leaned down, pressing her lips against his. Now stop worrying and hold me. Tomorrow everything might change. Tonight I just want this. Just us. The morning of the procedure dawned gray and cold. Isabella woke to the sound of rain against the windows. A soft, steady rhythm that had always soothed her. Vittorio was already awake, his body tense beside her. You didn't sleep. I dozed. A lie, and they both knew it. How do you feel? Ready. Isabella sat up, reaching for the robe she had left on the bedside chair. Whatever happens today, I'm ready. The drive to the clinic took 40 minutes. Isabella spent it holding Vittorio's hand, feeling the tension in his grip, the occasional tremor that betrayed his fear. If I don't say it enough, she murmured. I love you. You say it plenty. His voice was rough, but I never get tired of hearing it. At the clinic, Dr. Romano was waiting. Her voice was calm, professional, reassuring. The procedure will take approximately 3 hours. You'll be under general anesthesia for most of it. When you wake up, your eyes will be bandaged. We'll keep them covered for 48 hours to allow initial healing. After that, we'll remove the bandages and assess the results. And then we'll know. Dr. Romano paused. Are you ready? Isabella turned toward where she knew Vittorio was standing. She reached out, and his hands caught hers immediately. I'll be here when you wake up, he promised. Right here. I'm not going anywhere. I know. Isabella squeezed his hands. I'm not afraid. Liar. Maybe a little afraid. She smiled. But I'm more excited than scared. After 10 years of darkness, I might finally see the face of the man I love. Vittorio leaned forward, pressing his lips against her forehead. Stellina, he whispered. My light, my star. Come back to me. Always. The surgery took 3.5 hours. Vittorio spent every minute of it in the waiting room, staring at the door, his hands clenched so tightly that the tattooed letters on his knuckles seemed to pulse with every heartbeat. Lucia sat beside him, her presence a silent anchor. Enzo stood by the window, his posture alert, his eyes scanning every entrance out of habit. She's strong, Lucia said quietly. Whatever happens, she'll handle it. I know. Then stop looking like you're about to storm the operating room. Vittorio's jaw tightened. I should be in there. You should be exactly where you are. Waiting, trusting, allowing the people who know what they're doing to do their jobs. Lucia's voice softened. This is what love looks like sometimes, Vittorio. Not action, not control, just faith. Before he could respond, the door opened. Dr. Romano emerged, her surgical cap still in place, her expression carefully neutral. The procedure went well, she said. We won't know the full results until we remove the bandages. But there were no complications. All the indicators are positive. Vittorio's knees nearly buckled. Can I see her? She's in recovery. She'll be groggy from the anesthesia. But yes, you can see her. Isabella looked fragile in the hospital bed. Her eyes were covered with thick white bandages. Her dark hair spread across the pillow. Her hands folded over her stomach. The monitors beside her beeped steadily, tracking her heartbeat, her breathing. Her body's slow return to consciousness. Vittorio pulled a chair to her bedside and took her hand. He didn't speak, didn't need to. He simply sat there, holding her, waiting for her to wake up. Hours passed. Finally, her fingers twitched in his grip. Vittorio? Her voice was hoarse, confused. I'm here. He leaned closer. I'm right here. Did it work? We don't know yet. The bandages have to stay on for 2 more days. Isabella's lips curved into a small smile. 2 days. I've waited 10 years. I can wait 2 more days. That's my girl. Vittorio lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against her knuckles. How do you feel? Like someone operated on my eyes. A weak laugh, but also hopeful. Is that strange? No. Vittorio's voice was thick with emotion. That's exactly right. The next 48 hours were the longest of Vittorio's life. He stayed by Isabella's side constantly, leaving only when absolutely necessary, returning within minutes. Lucia came and went, bringing books to read aloud, updates on the business Vittorio was ignoring, quiet reassurances that everything outside the hospital walls was being handled. Enzo maintained his usual vigilant presence, though even he seemed affected by the tension. The normally stoic right-hand man had been caught more than once staring at Isabella's bandaged face with something like prayer in his expression. She changed you, he said to Vittorio during one of his brief absences from the room. The first time I thought it would pass. Young love, infatuation, but it didn't. And when she died, when we thought she died, you became someone else entirely. Someone worse. Someone colder. Enzo's voice was careful. Someone who had forgotten how to feel anything except anger. I watched you for 10 years, Vittorio. I watched you build an empire on the foundation of your grief. And I wondered if you would ever find your way back. I didn't think I would. But you did. Enzo's hand landed briefly on Vittorio's shoulder. An unusual display of physical affection from a man who typically showed emotion only through action. She brought you back. Whatever happens with her eyes, remember that. She already gave you the greatest gift anyone could give. What gift? Your humanity. On the morning of the 3rd day, Dr. Romano arrived to remove the bandages. The room was quiet. Vittorio sat beside Isabella's bed, holding her hand. Lucia occupied a chair by the window, her posture rigid with anticipation. Enzo stood by the door, his expression unreadable. Are you ready? Dr. Romano asked. Isabella's grip on Vittorio's hand tightened. Yes. The doctor moved forward, her fingers working carefully at the bandages wrapped around Isabella's head. Layer after layer came away, revealing the gauze pads beneath, then the closed lids of Isabella's eyes. When I tell you, I want you to open your eyes very slowly, Dr. Romano instructed. The light will be dim. We've adjusted it to minimize shock, but everything may still seem very bright at first. Isabella nodded. Dr. Romano removed the last of the gauze. Now, slowly, Isabella's lids fluttered, opened. For a moment she didn't react. Her gaze was unfocused, wandering, adjusting to sensations it hadn't experienced in a decade. Then her eyes found Vittorio's face, and filled with tears. Oh, she whispered. Oh, Vittorio. What? His voice was rough with fear. What's wrong? Can you not? I can see you. The words came out broken, wonderstruck. I can see you. She lifted her hand, slowly, trembling, and touched his face. But this time her eyes tracked the movement, watched her own fingers trace the line of his jaw. You're more beautiful than I remembered. Vittorio made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Probably both. I think the drugs are still affecting you. No. Isabella's eyes moved over his face, drinking in every detail. No, I mean it. The memory I had, it was a young man. A boy, really. But this. Her fingers found the silver threading through his temples. You've become something else entirely. Something stronger. Something older. More. Her thumb brushed across his cheekbone. More of everything. More pain. More strength. More love. Her voice cracked. I can see it all. In your eyes. In your face. Everything you've been through. It's all there. And you're not running? I'm never running. Isabella pulled him down, pressing her forehead against his. I can see you, Vittorio. After 10 years of darkness. I can see the face of the man I love. Behind them, Lucia de Falco was crying openly, her lace handkerchief pressed against her face. Enzo had turned toward the window, his shoulders suspiciously rigid. and Dr. Sofia Romano was smiling, watching a miracle unfold. 1 year later, the garden was full of roses, red ones, like the roses from Isabella's memories, and the afternoon light was golden and soft. Guests filled the rows of white chairs that had been set up beneath a canopy of silk and flowers. Isabella stood at the entrance to the garden path, her hand resting on Lucia's arm. "You look beautiful," the older woman said, and for once there was no sharp edge to her voice, only warmth. "I can see myself now," Isabella replied. "I still can't quite believe it." "Believe it," Lucia patted her hand. "And believe that my grandson is currently standing at that altar looking like he might pass out from emotion. You should probably go save him." Isabella laughed. It was a sound she made often now, a sound that had been rare in the darkness and had become abundant in the light. She walked down the aisle, her eyes fixed on Vittorio. He was wearing a black suit, perfectly tailored as always, with a red rose in his lapel. His dark hair was swept back from his face, revealing the tattoo on his neck, the ink she had traced so many times before she could see it. El cuor ricorda. The heart remembers. But now she could see his eyes too, the steel gray that had once seemed cold but now burned with warmth, with love, with the barely contained emotion of a man who had been given a second chance at everything. "Hi," she said when she reached him. "Hi yourself." His voice was rough. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "Funny. I was about to say the same thing about you." The ceremony was brief. They had already done this once, after all, but no less meaningful. The vows they exchanged were private, whispered, meant only for each other. And when the officiant pronounced them married again, Vittorio kissed her with the reverence of a man worshipping at a sacred altar. "Stellina," he murmured against her lips. "My light, my life, my everything." "Always," Isabella replied. "Now and forever." The reception lasted until well past midnight. Isabella danced with Vittorio, with Enzo, who turned out to be surprisingly graceful, with Lucia, who insisted on leading, with half a dozen people whose names she was still learning. But her favorite moment came later, when the guests had begun to filter away and the garden had grown quiet. Vittorio led her to a bench near the rose bushes, the same spot where they had sat together a lifetime ago, in a different garden, in a different world. "Do you remember this?" he asked. "I remember everything now." Isabella leaned against his shoulder. "Our first meeting, our first kiss, the night you asked me to run away with you. I should have gotten you out sooner. You got me out eventually. That's what matters." She turned to look at him, to actually look at him, with eyes that still marveled at the gift of sight. "We're here, together, after everything. That's the only thing that matters." Vittorio was quiet for a moment. Then, "I have something for you." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "We're already married," Isabella pointed out. "This isn't a ring." He opened the box, revealing a delicate gold chain with a small pendant, a star, crafted from what looked like tiny diamonds. "Stellina," Isabella breathed. "I had it made for you, for today, for our second wedding." He lifted the necklace, fastening it around her neck with gentle fingers. "A reminder that even in the darkest times, you were always my light." Isabella touched the pendant, feeling its weight against her collarbone. "I have something for you too." Vittorio's eyebrows rose. "You do?" "I've been waiting for the right moment." She reached into the hidden pocket of her dress, a pocket she had insisted on, despite the designer's protests, and withdrew a small photograph. A photograph of an ultrasound. Vittorio stared at it, then at her, then back at the photograph. "Isabella, I found out 3 weeks ago. I wanted to wait until today, until our anniversary." She was smiling so hard her face hurt. "We're gonna have a baby, Vittorio. Family. A real family." The sound Vittorio made was indescribable. He pulled her into his arms with desperate tenderness, burying his face in her hair, his body shaking with emotion. "A baby," he managed. "Our baby. Our baby." Isabella held him tightly. "A new beginning. A new story. Ours." For a long time, They simply held each other, wrapped in the scent of roses and the weight of everything they had survived. Then Vittorio pulled back, his hands cupping her face, his eyes, those steel-gray eyes that had once been so cold, shining with tears. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "Any of this. I don't deserve you. You deserve everything." Isabella's thumbs brushed away his tears. "You deserve love and happiness and a future full of hope. You deserve to be a father. You deserve to hold your child and tell them stories about their mother, about how you found her in a train station and whispered her name and changed both of your lives forever. I'll tell them everything. Everything. Including the parts where I was an absolute disaster of a human being?" Isabella laughed. "Especially those parts. Character building." Vittorio kissed her, soft and deep and full of promise. "I love you, Isabella de Falco." "I love you too, Vittorio de Falco." She pressed her forehead against his. "Now take me home. We have a nursery to design and a family to build and approximately 1,000,000 conversations about baby names. Already have one in mind." "Oh, Angelina." His voice was soft. "For a girl, if you're all right with that." Isabella's eyes filled with fresh tears. "More than all right." 8 months later. The delivery room was chaos, organized chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Doctors and nurses moved with practiced efficiency. Machines beeped and whirred. Isabella gripped Vittorio's hand so hard his knuckles turned white. "You're doing amazing," he told her. "I'm going to break your hand. I've been shot. I can handle it." Despite the pain, Isabella laughed. 20 minutes later, the sound of a baby's cry filled the room. "It's a girl," the doctor announced. "Healthy, beautiful, perfect." Vittorio's legs gave out. He would later claim he simply sat down very quickly. Enzo, who was waiting outside and heard the story secondhand, would maintain that his boss had absolutely collapsed and required assistance getting back up. But in the moment, all that mattered was the tiny bundle being placed in Isabella's arms. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Hello, Angelina." The baby was perfect. Dark hair like her mother, gray eyes like her father. She stopped crying the moment she heard Isabella's voice, her tiny face turning toward the sound. Vittorio leaned close, one hand on his wife's shoulder, the other reaching out to touch his daughter's cheek. "She's real," he said, his voice full of wonder. "She's ours. She's ours." Isabella looked up at him, her face radiant with exhaustion and love. "Our family. Our future." Vittorio kissed the top of her head. "Thank you." "For what?" "For everything. For walking into that train station. For not running when you learned who I was. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." His voice cracked. "For giving me this. All of this." Isabella shifted the baby slightly, making room. "Come here." Vittorio climbed carefully onto the bed, wrapping his arms around both of them. His wife, his daughter, his entire world, held in the circle of his embrace. "You know," Isabella said softly, "I used to wonder what the point of everything was. The darkness, the loss, the years of being no one from nowhere." She looked down at her daughter's sleeping face. "Now I understand. Every step of that journey led me here. To this moment. To you. The heart remembers," Vittorio murmured. "The heart remembers." Isabella smiled. "And the heart knows where it belongs." 2 years later, the garden was full of laughter. Angelina, 2 years old and already displaying the stubborn determination of both her parents, was toddling through the roses, chasing butterflies she had no hope of catching. Lucia sat on a nearby bench, watching her great-granddaughter with undisguised adoration. Enzo stood at the garden's edge, his posture relaxed in a way it never used to be. He had a child of his own now, a son, born 7 months ago to a woman he had met during the chaos of the Ricci trial. He still served as Vittorio's right-hand man, but his role had shifted, evolved. Protector had become family. Isabella and Vittorio sat together on a blanket spread across the grass, watching their daughter discover the world. "She has your stubbornness," Vittorio observed. "She has your glare," Isabella countered. That face she makes when she doesn't get her way? Pure DeFalco. I don't glare. You glare constantly. Only at people who deserve it. Isabella laughed, leaning into his side. His arm came around her shoulders automatically, pulling her close. Tell me something, she said. Anything. If you could go back. If you could do it all differently, would you? Vittorio was quiet for a long moment. No, he finally said. No. If I changed anything, I might lose this. His gesture encompassed the garden, their daughter, the life they had built. Every moment of pain, every year of darkness. It all led here. To you, to her, to us. He pressed a kiss against her temple. I wouldn't trade that for anything. Isabella turned to look at him. Really look at him, with eyes that still marveled at the gift of sight. I love you, Vittorio DeFalco. I love you too, Stellina. His gray eyes crinkled with a smile that had become familiar over the past 3 years. My light, my star, my everything. Angelina toddled back toward them, clutching a rose she had somehow managed to pick without injuring herself on the thorns. She presented it to her mother with solemn pride. Flower, she announced. It's beautiful, baby. Isabella took the rose, smelling its delicate fragrance. Just like you. Angelina beamed, then crawled into her father's lap, tucking herself against his chest like she belonged there. Because she did. They all did. In this garden. In this life. In this love that had survived fire and darkness and 10 years of impossible grief. Vittorio held his daughter with one arm, his wife with the other, and felt something he had forgotten how to feel for so long. Peace. True, genuine, unshakable peace. The heart remembers, he murmured. Isabella smiled, her head on his shoulder, her eyes on their daughter's sleeping face. The heart remembers, she agreed, and the heart knows how to heal. Above them, the sky was blue and clear, and somewhere in the garden, a nightingale began to sing. And so we come to the end of our story, dear listeners. A story about love that survived the impossible. About darkness that gave way to light. About 2 people who found each other not once, but twice, and refused to let go. Isabella and Vittorio DeFalco went on to have 2 more children. Twin boys, 5 years after Angelina was born. They named them Marco and Carlo, after Isabella's father and Vittorio's favorite brother. Lucia DeFalco lived to see all of her great-grandchildren born, passing peacefully in her sleep at the age of 89, surrounded by the family she had helped build and protect. Enzo Bellandi retired from active service at 55, though he remained a constant presence in the DeFalco household, Uncle Enzo, to 3 children who adored him. Dr. Sofia Romano went on to perfect her procedure, restoring sight to hundreds of patients around the world. She credited Isabella as her inspiration. And Salvatore Ricci died in prison, forgotten by history, his empire nothing more than a cautionary tale parents told their children. But this story was never really about villains or revenge. It was about hope, about the belief that even in our darkest moments, love can find us, heal us, save us, about the truth written on Vittorio DeFalco's neck, in ink that never faded. El Cuore Ricorda. The heart remembers. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. And remember, no matter how dark your world might seem, light always finds a way through. Until next time, dear listeners, may your hearts remember only the beautiful things, and may love always find its way home. The end.